no radio at all. Not even with the bombing plane that's coming over. All radio is dead.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Welcome back to another episode of Horror of the Worlds, where we talk about horror movies and how the world has influenced them. I'm Curtis Gerhardt, and unfortunately that's all that's here today. Stephen Miller will be back on the next episode. He just has his own personal business he has to deal with. So let's go ahead and get started a little bit today. You know, we're talking about a man that has felt like his country has cheated him. You know, inflation's through the roof. Very well-spoken individual. He wants to make his country great again, that it once was. You know, we are talking about someone none other than Adolf Hitler. He was a very well-spoken individual that had people rally with him, even through hard times, even with people wanting to agree with him. Because so after World War I, they had a huge economical problem where it cost pretty much a shit ton of money for them just to buy a loaf of bread. So, you know, with that anger, you know, people followed Hitler. He followed his anger, you know. Like Adolf Hitler was born, you know, April 20th, 1889, and thankfully died too late, April 30th, 1945, where he self-deleted himself. But one of the things that he wanted to do, like I said before, he was a very well-spoken influencer that wanted to demolish the German democracy and become a dictator. He went on to have all the citizens that would serve the state. Democracy would be abolished, and one's rights would be sacrificed for the Führer state for the greater good. So also, like around this time, you know, back when or before the actual World War II kicked off, and what we think of that whole moment, the Nazis and Hitler and his team were getting rid of the Jews. Not so much killing them, but they were sending them out of the country to different parts of the world, Madagascar, neighboring countries. So during this time, German movies were kind of like shit. You know, he hated a lot of the German movies because they were just propaganda films, and he did not enjoy them personally. He wanted movies to be entertaining. That's why some of his favorite movies were King Kong. He had liked Mickey Mouse. Like, they were more artful. So there was a ban. So this was where it was kind of a little bit difficult for me to find movies for that kind of spoke around this whole time frame or influences, because Dr. Ernst Seeger, you know, not the Mariners, you know, Corey Seager or the Dodgers, but Dr. Ernst Seeger ended up banning a lot of horror movies around this time because they gave a feeling of amoral and exciting base instincts. So horror movies went out the window. Tarzan went out the window just because of, actually, surprisingly, animal abuse, or they saw it as animal abuse, and some of the people were being abused in it. So what a weird way to kind of actually put things. So with the Nazis actually kicking out a lot of the Jews and all that stuff at that time frame, one of the great and bad things that happened during this time frame was America was making a shit ton of money off of the Germans and the Nazis making movies for them, because they had MGM, they had Paramount, they had a WB and all that stuff over in Germany that was making monies and selling them guns to like profit and actually kind of launder the money. And we were making fascist films for them, you know, something that was actually, they saw it as, you know, what they were trying to stand for, it was more art for them. One thing I did come across during all this research, which I thought was really kind of awesome and in a way, is Charlie Chaplin. We all know him. You know, Germany hated him, not just because of how he looked like Hitler or kind of made fun of him. If I remember correctly, they stated that he was an acrobatic Hollywood Jew, and that's why they didn't like him. I think the last time he visited Germany or Berlin was 1931 for some kind of movie or something like that. I don't exactly remember that off the top of my head. But he made a movie. He himself made a movie. He financed it himself, and it started filming in 1938, called The Great Dictator. And unfortunately, this movie didn't come out until 1940, which was like a year after World War II actually started. This movie almost got all American movies banned in Germany, which Hollywood did not like, and they were really kind of pissed off at Charlie Chaplin. Was one of two gentlemen in Hollywood that was actually trying to say something, trying to do something. They didn't 100% support the whole German Nazi Hitler movement that was going on. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into like the first horror movie. One movie that you guys haven't probably seen, but I really actually recommend if you're into older movies, because it is a slow burn of a movie. It is called Ferryman Maria. Ferryman Maria came out in 1938, directed by Frank Wisbar. So like a quick synopsis, because the synopsis on this movie is too long. I would recommend you reading it before you even attempt to watch it. With it being as old as it is, it should be streaming damn near everywhere. I came across it with it on YouTube. I'll actually post a link down below so you guys could watch it if you want to watch it. So the movie starts off with a ferryman, where they actually had the boat and the rope, and he actually has to pull the boat across from one side to the other side. So he ends up going across because the bell rings, and this dark figure ends up getting on the boat. Doesn't say anything, very creepy, very macabre. And, the ferryman starts to go across, and you see him slowly losing grip on the wire or the rope that was pulling across, and dies. Kind of quick and easy. But then there's a so there is a drifter called Maria, of course, where she's the one that actually becomes a ferryman, because she comes across this town looking for a job, looking for a life, because she doesn't have a life, she doesn't have a home, and she gets a job as a ferryman. And during this whole time frame, she ends up coming across a gentleman from across the lake, and kind of protects him because he's a soldier, if I'm not mistaken, that's being attacked by a couple men on horses. So she saves the man's life. So I kind of look at it. I couldn't really find out if this is what it meant or what it was intended to mean. I couldn't tell if this is what it meant or whatnot. But I feel like this is a great representation, or it can be seen as a representation of how Germany felt after World War One. You have the countries across always attacking, almost belittling what Germany saw as a great small little town, because this town was having a festival, and there was a fiddler playing music way too loud all the damn time. But it was a joyous little town, and death was always trying to come across into, say, Germany. Like, if you're listening to this, I did air quotes. I don't know, that's how I kind of perceive it. It was something as basic. Like, the whole German people loving, enjoying life, and the outside source coming in and trying to ruin their lives. Where they're still struggling and still trying to become a great place. Again, that's perception. During before World War II actually started kicking off, I want to say about a week before, it was a signing for where Ribbentrop and Stalin made a Molotov-Ribbentrop pact for joint seize of Poland. So they pretty much joined up forces to try to take over Poland, and I want to say a couple other countries neighboring it, because Russia believed that some of that land was theirs, as did Germany. As did Hitler. He wanted Germans' land back that they lost during World War One. We're going to jump into a Russian movie, which this movie is, oh my god, fucking phenomenal. it's a movie that everyone should see if you like horror movies. If you like, yes, I'm gonna say Evil Dead 2, just because of the craziness and animated, amazing graphics. But it is called V, also known as like Spirit of Evil. But this movie came out in 1967. The names will be posted here on the video if you watch it, or the description of the podcast as well. So one of the great things about this movie was it is. All right, the great thing about this movie is it was the first Soviet era horror film to officially been released in the USSR. Yes, 67, quite a few years after World War II has ended. But I could not find a good Russian movie. This movie wasn't based off of World War II or quite influenced off of it. Stalin and everyone had Russia on such a bad lockdown where it was hard for them to actually express themselves to make movies. During my research, I come across like on Reddit and stuff where they didn't really make horror films. They made dramas because everyday life and what they had to go through was dramatic, traumatic, and horrific on its own. So there was no real horror movies. So this movie, oh my gosh, I so much recommend this. I know I keep on repeating myself on that end. All right, a quick synopsis I'm going to kind of say is, so there are the Sumerians that are in a chapel and they're going on vacation for a couple days, or they're sent off for vacation for a couple days. And these three gentlemen end up getting lost on their way back home or where they're headed off to, where they come across a small, I guess, farm, you would say. And the deal is, like, there's an old lady and she says, like, the deal is each one of you guys has to sleep in a separate room, in a separate area. So they all agree. And later on, while Korma ends up trying to fall asleep in the barn on a bed of hay, this old lady tries to seduce him. He tries to get away from her, but she puts him under a spell. And then he ends up bending over and she hops on his back and rides him like a horse, and they start to fly. Yes, you heard me correctly. They start to fucking fly. And I don't know, some of the little effects was so funny to me, just because there was a hot second where you can actually see that they're puppets. But then he realizes, like, holy shit, I'm under a spell. And they end up going to the ground, and he beats pretty much her to death. And while she says, "You're killing me, I'm dying," she turns into a beautiful young woman. And he freaks out, runs away, and they go back to the chapel, their church. The owner of the village ends up sending for a priest or one of them, and he asked for Koma himself because that's what his daughter was asking for, and they're like in her somewhat dying breath. He refuses to go. He does his best to try to escape and not actually go. Every moment he gets, he's trying to hop off the wagon, trying to get out the front door. And this is just so freaking funny. Trust me, it is funny. So when he gets to this village, the lady dies. And the request is he has to pray over the body for 3 nights in a row. And each night gets kind of crazier and crazier. And such an amazing, like I said, Evil Dead is like the only way I could describe it, just on how cartoonishly animated it gets. You'll love this movie because of that. In a way, I don't know, it took me way too long to watch this movie, and I always came across it since I am a little bit of a physical media whore. I wish I would have bought this when it was on sale. I'm going to be paying full price for it because it is really worth the full price. I'm going to leave it off at that. I'm not going to talk about the fate or any of that good fun stuff. I do feel like it's a movie that you need to and should watch. It should be streaming almost anywhere as well. So with Russia and Germany attacking Poland, Germany starts to head west, towards France. Once when he moves over to France, that's when the French and Britain start to actually declare war upon Germany. Like, they were trying to stay out of it before, but you got to protect yourself, regardless. You can't just roll over like Poland kind of did, and France kind of did too. Because I want to say it was only like a 2-week battle. The amount that went on during World War II is just, you can't cover it in a episode of a podcast. Even when people actually cover World War II, it's usually 2 or 3 episodes, and that's still just touching the surface. But all right, so we're in Paris, in Great Paris. Another movie that's not quite World War II. It's not even set during it or any of that stuff, but it's, as you could probably tell where we're going, we're talking about a French movie that came out in 1955. Les Diaboliques. Came out in 1955. Les Diaboliques, or Diaboliques. I know I'm butchering that name as well. It's directed by Henri Georges Clouzot. This is one of those movies that if you enjoy foreign films, you need to watch this one. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is a very slow, or I should say, if you don't enjoy slow burns, or if you're not okay with slow burns, you might want to skip this movie. But again, it's one that you should see if you enjoy horror movie history. You kind of want to plug those holes that need to get plugged. The IMDb synopsis is so short and so meh. It's the wife and mistress of a sadistic dean of an exclusive prep school conspires to murder him. That barely says anything. But at the same time, though, that is the whole movie. A man and a wife are together, kind of running the school. He's the dean, principal. Horrible fucking man. Like, you're actually happy when they conspire and actually pull off his death. Because he is such an asshole. He's mean to the kids. He's mean to his wife, where his wife is actually played by Vera Clouzot, which is the wife of the director. Which she suffers from a weak heart during this movie, or in the movie. So her and her friend, which happens to be the mistress of her husband as well, conspire to actually kill him. Moves towards her friend's apartment and calls him up and says, "I want a divorce." Okay, yeah, no big deal. But he's angry, he's pissed off, he's embarrassed that she wants a divorce. How can she want that? The guy's a fucking okay. So he ends up going on the train, picks her up, or attempts to pick her up, but they end up poisoning him and then throwing him in a bathtub of water and drowning him. Such a great death. It's bleak, the feeling and the emotion you get from this. Like, she doesn't want to do this, but her friend is kind of making her do it at the same time. Later on, when they actually try to go to the police to kind of, admit their faults, they were saying like, "Oh, where you did this? Oh, you gave me the statue. Yeah, but you put him in the sheet or into the basket. Oh, you dumped him into the pool." Which later on they end up going back to the school and dumping him into the pool, draining out the pool, and he's not there. So where did he go? You end up finding out later on what has actually happened. I'm going to leave it off at that, because this movie does like an amazing job on the whole storytelling. You actually feel sympathy for Vera's character. You feel sympathy for her. And at the end of the movie, it actually tells you, don't ruin this movie for your friends or family or anything else. Pretty much don't be an asshole and spoil this movie. I'm not going to be the one that spoils this movie, except for telling you to watch a goddamn movie. Now, a cool little tidbit about this movie is Henri actually beat out Alfred Hitchcock just by supposedly hours to purchase the book rights to make this movie. So this could have been an American Alfred Hitchcock movie, which, I would have really enjoyed as well, because I think he probably would have made this movie a little bit more entertaining through that middle part, that whole second act. But the authors of the book ended up, I guess, writing another book for him, which he ended up making Vertigo. The name of the book that was bought, or that this movie is based off of, is She Who Was No More. Pretty cool. I'll have the authors, here on the screen here in a second. And there it was. Another little unfortunate fact too as well. Vera Clouseau ended up dying from a heart attack about 5 years after this movie was made as well, which was kind of coincidental, where she just pretty much played a movie with someone that had a weak heart. A little macabre, IMDb trivia for you. Once when France was going into the whole German invading France, small little country that was being ran by, you could say, influenced Hitler to show that fascism was actually a form that could actually be made and actually be successful in ways, however one wants to describe being successful. Benito Mussolini, we all know Mussolini, at least the name, but he joins the Axis and fights Europe and north of Africa with the Germans. And with that, we're headed into an Italian film that is set during World War II, but honestly you could take this movie and place it in any time frame, almost anywhere. You could put it on an island. You could put this story in a mansion, like a nowadays mansion. This movie is usually on the list of when it says like a top 10 most disturbing movies. This is one of the top 10 movies. It's Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom. Came out in 1975. Directed by Pier Paolo Pasolini, which this was, I want to say, one of his last movies that he made as well. He was known as making pretty artsy movies to begin with, and then got more loose, crazy, and very grotesque movies in ways. But supposedly he was murdered a little bit after this movie was made, or I think before this movie even hit like the theaters at the time. Supposedly he was murdered during a carjacking when the kid was caught driving his car. But the case was later reopened when 3 people claimed to have killed him for the movies that he's made. It's an unsolved murder. But thankfully, after this movie, I don't want to say that, because the movie the movie is disturbing. It's not as, I almost want to compare it to, of course, a Serbian film, where that movie has its redeeming qualities in it. But I almost kind of want to link it closer to The Human Centipede by Tom Six, because people hate that movie that hasn't seen the movie. They think that movie is horrific and gross because they heard about the movie. Thing is, though, a lot of them have never seen that movie, and that movie is not that bad. This one actually is bad. So this movie there's 4 segments in the movie. The first segment, I didn't write down what the name of the segment was, but in the part 1, you end up seeing a military group that is supposed to represent the higher ups, the governments, the rich. But you see them gathering, I want to say it was like 9 boys and 9 girls, and they're judging them based off of their looks. And by looks, I mean they are stripping them down naked and seeing what they got. That sounds kind of bad. It is bad. This whole movie is bad, but I'm glad I finally watched it, so I don't have to watch it again. Nice little tidbit on my end is I do own a copy of this. It is French, and it does not have English subtitles, so I ended up using the Google Translate, putting it next to my speaker, and letting it translate what they were saying every so often, so I wasn't completely lost. It didn't make the movie any better, but it made it more understanding on some of the story, the actual story that was spread throughout the movie. Because there is a Mademoiselle that was kind of happy that the story, that she was the one that was making the story actually exist, where she was describing her moments and why she became part of the society, her being used and abused and getting used to abusing others. Let's go on to the next part. So the second part of this movie is called Group of Mania, which is putting this segment so lightly. It is, to put it quick and easy, this is when they start sodomizing. This is a sodomy of the whole thing, where they end up sexually abusing in any which way that you could imagine during this whole part. When it comes to the homosexual acts, or if you decide to watch this movie, or even attempt to watch this movie, if you're not okay with like sex scenes that are somewhat rape, this movie isn't for you. Not that they're like screaming and like trying to get away, they're just more so accepting of it, which is, it is hard to watch. I mean, there are even parts like where they have collars on them and they're being walked like dogs. The men and women are, like I said, buck ass naked and being walked like dogs. Honestly, this is probably the second easiest part of the movie to watch. Because I don't mind watching rape revenge films because they piss me the fuck off. But I'm okay watching those movies. I mean, unfortunately, I'm okay watching those movies. But this next segment was titled, or the part 3 was Group of Shit. And it is exactly that. What is the whole term? Corpophilia? Yeah. So this is when they eat shit. Yeah. It wasn't real shit. I guess they ended up making it with chocolate and orange rinds and some other ingredients to kind of actually make it poop-like. I don't know. It's really hard to watch. This is the part that kind of got under my skin, so I kind of know where my line is, and it's shit. Who would have known? Huh. All right, so quick, easy. I don't like nothing else to tell about this damn movie. That part. Part 4, the last part, is where the whole structure kind of falls apart, or it's supposed to fall apart, or that's what it's symbolizing, is the blood room, or circle of blood. There's torture in the courtyard, and it's not as bad. I'm saying this like, as the movie itself. I'm trying to not entice you to watch it, because it's not a movie that, like, if you're that kind of person that wants to watch this movie, because it's not for everyone. It's a lot like Cannibal Holocaust. It's that one and done. Like, you're happy that you saw it once. Hopefully you don't have to watch it again. I don't see why you would want to watch it again. It's not one I would actually highly recommend. This movie is not one I would recommend to other people. So that's why I'm actually telling you this, so you don't have to watch it. But yeah, you don't feel good after this movie. Like, you don't really feel dirty. You're just like, why the fuck did I sit down and watch this damn movie? So you could say you've seen it. You don't have to, like, why is this movie so disturbing? Like, they are correct. And I wish a lot of those YouTubers that I watched, that when they said this movie was bad, I wish they would have described it a little bit more. Actually, I wish I would have described it a little bit better. But it was supposed to represent an extreme version of what a fascist or a careless, self-flating government or society would do to young people or those beneath them. They sodomize because they've been there, done that, and they will teach you to get used to it. Pretty much get used to it. Like, get fucked, eat shit, and die. That's pretty much the whole premise of this movie, is kind of how things are in a sick, perverted way. It's all right. So this next little segment is going to be kind of stupid quick, because we should move over to Britain, but I don't want to talk about this movie that was kind of set around this time frame. Is Dead of Night, that came out in 1945. It is a British horror movie, but I'm going to wait to talk about this movie with Steven during another episode. You'll find out why. So, during around 7:48 a.m. Hawaiian time, America joins the war, pretty much by force. And it's an attack that lasted only a couple hours, but this is Pearl Harbor, where Japan ended up pretty much destroying the whole base. The biggest traumatic event that's ever happened in Hawaii. Thankfully, nothing else has happened that bad. I know they had a fire in the 2021 or something like that, but I don't know, something that was kind of potentially foreseeable, because one thing that I've never learned in school until I actually started doing this subject was I never understood why Japan attacked America. They weren't really friends with Hitler or anything. They weren't joint forces. I didn't know anything about Japan's issue, why they were angry. We shut down their trade routes, so they weren't getting their money, during any of the trades or any of that stuff, especially when they're an island there. But also, they were just as gross and disgusting, almost as bad as, arguably just as bad, if not worse, than some of the things that Germany was doing during World War II. I mean, Japan was over in China, raping and eating people. They weren't like full-fledged, like eating everyone, but there are some fucks that were actually cannibalizing people. So I've read, so I've heard. I don't know 100% of that part, but I've been hearing it's almost part of Japan's history when they go to war, is that they rape, pillage, and burn. And I did not know that part about Japan during World War II. So during the whole tariffs issue, Japan said, fuck it, let's go. Hitler was like, oh, all right, well, as long as they're not attacking us, well, fuck off, everyone. There's a lot of things that happened during the American-Japan War. America started fighting over in Europe. They helped out in Africa as well. And there was a lot of island hopping that was going on during the whole Japanese war, or the war with Japan. Again, I don't want to talk about the whole history on it, because there is so much that's going on during all this time frame with all the other countries that were actually helping Europe fight against Germany. During this time frame, Italy, Mussolini died, and Mussolini ended up dying, and Italy started fighting with America. Russia started coming over and helping out, which also, a quick little thing too in Russia, it doesn't really pertain to this that much, but is quite awesome. There was this aviator group that was all women called the Night Witches, and I highly recommend giving them a list, looking into their history, because honestly, if it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't have done as good as we did against the Germans, because they were bombing them at night. They were so feared. The Nazis feared them so much, where if any of the Nazi pilots shot down any of their planes, they automatically pretty much got a Iron Cross, which I guess was the highest medal that they could get during World War II. That's how fearful and how amazing these Night Witches were. There's another podcast I listen to. I highly recommend him. It's called Time Suck. He does a good episode about this. And if you like World War II history, if you like women fighting in this war, or in war and actually being strong women, give Night Witches, a look into. You will be happy and sad, but yeah, during this, America even had this whole thing too, where a lot of women were actually fighting. They actually let women fight in some of these things. They had the WASP that were even going through this. especially during this time frame, women weren't really allowed to do anything other than be fucking medics, because they were. I'm not going to really get into it that much because I don't want to get angry at this time. All right, so August 6, 1945, we dropped the first atom bomb on Hiroshima. It's, I don't know, I jumped into it. I'm dropping the bomb just like we did. We wanted to end this war. We were tired of losing men. Japan's tactics were working, but they weren't working at the same time with kamikaze pilots. They were feared. They were fucking things up, but they were also losing a lot of men, as were we. They're a prideful country that fought tooth and nail. So we dropped another one on August 9th, 1945 at Nagasaki. This is what pretty much ended the war. Only less than a month later, on September 2nd, 1945, the war was over. The fucker Hitler was dead. Japan finally surrendered. Thankfully, Japan surrendered. During World War II, so many civilians and innocent... There's always innocent people during war, but so many citizens have died during this fucking war on both sides that did not need to die. We weren't saints. No one were saints during this fucking war. Thankfully, that was the last huge war with those numbers. Yes, there have been wars afterwards, but whatever. But you know what? What's great after, we drop a bomb is we make a sequel. Yes, we're talking about the H-bomb, is the hydrogen bomb. The second generation thermonuclear bomb was tested. So, many years later, I think it was March 1st, 1954, we were testing the hydrogen bomb, which we ended up testing it in Bikini Atoll. That is north of Australia and just south of Japan. And during this testing, there was a boat, where some Japanese men were tuna fishing, and they pretty much nuked. They had radioactive. They got showered with radioactive water and waste, where I think all 22 of the men were okay. They did suffer from the poisoning and everything there. One of them did end up dying from the nuclear activity. I'm gonna try to do my best to pronounce his name. The Kobayama Akichi. He is known to be the first victim of the hydrogen bomb. We're talking about that. I'm not too sure if I already mentioned it, but we are talking about Gojira. Godzilla, 1954, directed by Ishiro Honda. This movie is fucking phenomenal. More tidbits I didn't realize during all this as well, during the research, was fairly recently, in about 2004, if you haven't seen Godzilla since 2004, more than likely you've only seen the American version of this movie, which was a Godzilla King of the Monsters, which was Gojira, the Japanese version, but there was more added to it. There was more cutscenes. I shouldn't say cutscenes. There was like an American general that was superimposed in some of the scenes to make it more American. So it wasn't until 2004 when I think it was a Criterion or whomever re-released it, and we actually were able to see the Japanese version of it. Which, that's the thing, I don't even know if I saw the original Japanese version of it or not. That's beyond the point. So originally this movie was inspired by Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, from the producer Tomoyuki Tanaka, and he was, I think, over in China at the time and flying across the bay or the ocean, and he had that idea, and also remembering the whole the Diago Fukiori Amaru incident. I'm gonna have that posted here on the bottom, but that was a boat, the whole tuna fishing boat incident was named. He had this idea of Gojira, which was originally supposed to be an octopus, not the giant sea lizard that it is. The great thing is, so you could definitely tell that it was influenced from 20,000 Fathoms, because their working title was The Giant Monster from 20,000 Miles Beneath the Sea. That's a fucking mouthful. But the director, Ishiro, later shortened it to Project G. G's for giant, by the way. Let's go ahead and get on to like the quick synopsis of this movie. Because I do actually want to talk about this movie on another episode as well, but this is a little bit of a teaser as well. An underwater hydrogen bomb testing awakens a fire-breathing monster from its centuries-long sleep, and it soon starts to terrorize Japan. I think we all know Godzilla. It awakens and it fucks Japan up, and they can't do anything. I feel like it was... So this whole movie was kind of showcasing how the government and the society of Japan actually was. All the different steps it has to take for things to actually get approved. They did it extremely well in Shin Godzilla, where it would be like 10 minutes of them talking from general to director to president to this and that, and it's like, oh, we need permission. Oh, we need permission. They did that in such a great anime kind of way. But this movie, it has, you could see the pride Japan has. This was their way of, we're staying strong, the people will be strong, and they will survive anything. Even if it is, kind of sought after as an American disaster. They're bombing Tokyo. They're bombing all these cities, all these different boroughs. The Japanese people will survive, and they will continue to fight no matter what. And a lot of these movies, a lot of the Godzilla origin movies, always kind of have that sense of pride where it is they will not ask for help. Gojira, like I said, Shin Godzilla, even Godzilla -1, which that movie is so fucking amazing. I have not seen it in color. I've only seen it in the -1 color, and that movie is so powerful without color. For me, it was pretty breathtaking. That movie deserved all its awards that it got, especially when I think like the graphics team was only 23, 32 people. So I mean, enough about -1. This minus that subject. And like with this movie, another cool little tidbit was, I did not write the original gentleman that played Godzilla in the suit, but I guess the suit was about like 200 pounds, and he had such a hard issue moving around in this suit that just sloshed his sweat. And I guess he was only he was a Godzilla that only played during this era of Godzilla. Because another one of those great things about Godzilla too, especially this is the longest running franchise to date. They're still making Godzilla movies. They're making fucking King Kong and Godzilla movies, but no movies have I don't think there's really that many turd Godzilla movies. There are some that are just not. Yeah, so Gojira is another movie that I would highly recommend anyone to watch, even if you're not much of a monster fan. It's a movie that helped start a lot of sci-fi films. During World War II, we already talked about what America was doing during this time frame. They were trying to influence and show how amazing American military was. I'll post it up here, I believe, because they were doing a lot of big bug movies, and they were also I think it was one of our last episodes too when we were talking about the Thing prequel, which again kind of showcases why America is so great at all this. The military is so great. It wasn't so much World War II based, but there are those little sprinkles that it could be Godzilla could be seen as the atomic bomb. You know, it was our second bomb that we dropped pretty much near them, fucked over a boat, that has helped influence this movie. You know, horror movies have gotten influenced by fucking everything. You know, the horror of the worlds. Well, if you've been listening and watching us for this long, you know, give us a follow, subscribe to us. You know, follow us on our links on Instagram and Twitter, where myself and or Steven will end up replying, and you know, shit, if you want to let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what you would like us to talk about, if you want us to get more in depth about some of these things, if you need another host that can actually speak, feel free to leave a message. You know, and thankfully fucking Bridget isn't here. Peace out, you guys. Have a good one.